you have to apply the common carrier rules.
It's an interesting concept, I think. Let's move on to the economy, and it'll be interesting. We'll monitor obviously what this oversight board does, and we're going to monitor what's going to happen with this January 6th insurrection.
By the way, sorry, Jason. The last thing on this is you can tell if you graphed, and I'm sure somebody listening to All In can graph and tweet this, but if you graphed the price to earnings ratio of big tech as all of these issues have come out, like, if you looked at a time series of their PE, and you put on their, things like George Floyd, things like the Capitol riots, all of these things that have created these
flashpoints
issues around free speech, flashpoints, the massacre in New Zealand in Christchurch that was live streamed on Facebook, all of this stuff. What you'll see is at least capitalism is voting that these companies will not be allowed to be companies much longer.
So the smart money is betting that they're going to be regulated and something's going to change.
It's going to be a quasi-governmental organization, exactly. That the level of regulation at a government by government level is going to be so onerous as to make these companies quasi-nonprofits that work on behalf of countries.
Yeah, they're going to become utilities, right? They're going to get regulated like utilities at some point.
Or they're going to have to adopt some governance, like we've talked about, or other options will emerge. And I think what Jack is doing with is it Blue Sky is what they're calling it?
Blue Sky, yeah.
Yeah. What they're really doing with Blue Sky is saying your profile and your data is going to be stored on some blockchain or some decentralized system like Bitcoin or like any other peer-to-peer service, which means it's not on their server. Twitter just pulls all that data together. So we would all have our own domain names in calacanis.com or sacks.com/profile dot whatever the HTML equivalent is. Let's just call it .social. Your sacks.social URL would be your profile on Facebook, Twitter, and everywhere else. And when you posted to it, it would post to Facebook and Twitter. Therefore, they could say, we don't actually host this stuff. We're just pulling it together, which then destroys their business model, per Chamath's point. What do we think, as a little aside, is going to happen with the TikTok case now that Trump is out of office and Biden is in office? We sort of alluded to China, Sacks, being a super important thing that we all have consensus on now. What should happen with TikTok? And do you think Biden will go after TikTok and say, hey, we got to get this out of here because it's, essentially spyware and Jack Ma was just resurfaced? And let's just talk about China for a second. Yeah,
I think the sad reality is that the whole TikTok thing is going to get swept under the rug. I think there'll be no restrictions on TikTok. I think what we need, the issue with banning TikTok, though, is that it's just one place where China can collect data on all of us. I mean, the reality is there's thousands of places. And so, I do think that taking some action on TikTok is warranted, but it is a little bit of selective enforcement. But what I would like to see is some guarantee, some assurance that TikTok is collecting data in the way they're saying they're collecting it, and that there's not sort of spyware within the app. And I don't think we know for sure whether there's spyware or not.
I'll say it slightly differently. I've maintained this for a while, but it is inconceivable that inside of big tech, in every single company that you define big tech, is not at least one spy from Russia, China, India, Israel, Pakistan,
Saudi Arabia.
Did I tell you guys I had a spy working for me at Climate?
No.
You got arrested? Did I tell you guys about this?
No, tell us the story.
It's public, so I'll share it. We had a data scientist named Hightower, great guy, worked on our remote sensing team and worked on our nitrogen model, which predicted nitrogen content in soil and was very deep in the code base and everything. And shortly after I had left, I found out this. So Climate, just for the audience, my company I started and ran was acquired by Monsanto in 2013, which is a big seed company. A lot of people know it for other things. And so I left and I found out that the guy quit, went to the airport, and the FBI intercepted him at the airport, and they found tucked into his bag a thumb drive, and he had downloaded all of our code base for our nitrogen models, and he was taking them to give them to the Chinese government. And so he's in jail right now. He's in prison in the US right now. But this was like the most nondescript, super nice scientist, data scientist guy you've ever met. Like, you would have had zero suspicion. And it turns out he was a spy.
This is the point. Yeah. How many of those exist in Facebook and
it was
Google?
And by the way, it was so easy for him to get access to our code base, and he pulled all this stuff down, and he had the whole model. And there's a lot of articles about what happened in our case. But you're right; it's happening all over the place, and I don't think that we fully appreciate like how much of America's IP is stored in software and data, and how accessible that is to employees inside of these organizations, and that the security is not adequate to protect that data and that IP.
And then the crazy thing is, like, when just to connect the two dots here on this Jack Ma thing, like when you saw that video where, like, basically he was forced to, show fealty
I'm okay.
I'm okay. And, this is all about the Chinese
I'm not
party.
being held captive.
My gosh. Like, I mean, these are all quasi-governmental companies. Alibaba exists because of the largesse of the Communist Party and Xi Jinping. If that wasn't clear after last week, I mean, and so to your point, like, if any company gets a hold of US user data or otherwise, it's effectively the Chinese government getting a hold of that data.
Yeah, we don't need proof, David, when Jack Ma disappears and then comes back and he looked nervous on that video. I'm no expert, but he did not look like he was the Jack Ma who was giving speeches and inspiring people. And I don't know what this does to entrepreneurship in China, but I mean, who in China is going to start a company now and want to be the next Jack Ma or Jeff Bezos?
No, I think Jason, it's even simpler.
What happens?
It makes entrepreneurship even simpler, meaning for those entrepreneurs that thought that there was a balance between financial imperative and moral imperative, there's no balance. You can flush the moral imperative down the fucking toilet. China will allow you to get super rich and super successful as long as you super toe the line. And that's the message.
Right. It's like what Putin did with Khodorkovsky in Russia. It's like he basically told all the oligarchs, you work for us now. And it worked. And that's basically it worked. That's basically the message from the CCP to Jack Ma and to every other entrepreneur in China is you work for us now. And by the way, civil military fusion was a policy expressly announced by President Xi. One other data point on this I think is really interesting is that Biden just announced that he was keeping on Christopher Wray as the head of the FBI. Christopher Wray gave a speech back in July at the Hudson Institute about the counter-espionage efforts that the FBI is engaged in. And he was saying that the FBI has more cases now related to Chinese counterintelligence. He said that the FBI is opening a new China-related counterintelligence case every 10 hours.
Wow,
and,
two a day.
Two a day. And of the nearly 5,000 active FBI counterintelligence cases currently underway across the country, almost half are related to China. So this is directly from a speech he gave in July. So I think it's really interesting. Now, at the time that he gave this speech, a lot of people were saying, well, this is just more of Trump's China baiting. But I think that by Biden keeping on Christopher Wray, there's a continuity of policy there. And I think, focusing on TikTok is probably the wrong thing. We need a more comprehensive policy to deal with counterintelligence.
Well, it's a good start, though, to say, if you hit scale, we're not going to let you operate here, and we want reciprocity. Adding to this, outgoing Secretary Pompeo the day before the inauguration tweeted, I have determined that the People's Republic of China is committing genocide and crimes against humanity in China, targeting the Uyghurs, Muslims, and members of other ethnic and religious minority groups. That's quite a bomb to leave the day before. And I think this signals we are going to keep resetting this relationship. And what an incredible opportunity for us to bring factories back here, bring, as we've talked about here, manufacturing back. Correct, Friedberg?
That's what I think.
Oh,
let's kick it off. We got 3 million factories in China. I think we've got less than 100,000 in America.
Let's go.
And,
it will be so glorious. It will be so fucking glorious. I mean, think about this, right? Look, think about the amount of money. Like, at the end of the day, what is a government's purpose? Is it to run at a profit? No. That's our job, right? Is it to run at break even? I would actually say no. I think it's to basically promote the prosperity of current and future generations of its citizens. And so
we should be investing.
So if
this is the perfect investment.
So if we're going to be printing trillions of dollars. And, we should talk about the stimulus bill because Biden's going to rip in another $2 trillion, which I think is
a perfect segue.
And then, by the way, and then after that, there's going to be it's amazing infrastructure bill. Put the money to work. Let's reclaim a bunch of this capability on shore and let's rebuild America.